Lots to cover. But first, as protests continue in the United States, 2 NYPD officers were shot and one stabbed Wednesday night in Brooklyn. A suspect first stabbed an officer in the neck, then went after his gun, which discharged, striking 2 other officers. In the 10 days since Mr. Floyd's death, protests have turned violent, and racial tensions in the U.S. are sadly at an all-time high. Joining me now to discuss what's happening in the cities across America and what needs to happen to heal these racial divisions. I'm joined by the niece of Dr. Martin Luther King, Pastoral Associate for Priests for Life, and founder of Alveda King Ministries, Dr. Alveda King. Thank you for being here, Alveda.
Thank you, Raymond. It's wonderful to join you and to have this opportunity to discuss this very sensitive issue.
I agree, an important one. I want to start with your take on these protests. Now, all week I've heard anchors use, and TV anchors, use your uncle Martin Luther King's words, to my eye, out of context to justify rioting, mainly this line.
I think we've got to see that a riot is the language of the unheard.
Now, Alveda, would Dr. King approve of the looting and the burning and the violence we're seeing on the streets of America with the end of achieving racial equality?
The prophet, Martin Luther King Jr., never advocated violence. If you really listen closely, you'll see that they cut that off mid-sentence, because right after, as he was doing that interview, he continued to say, I think it was on 60 Minutes, and he said, yes, I do not support violence. I am nonviolent. We must use nonviolence. So they took that out of context. Prophet Martin Luther King Jr. also said, we may have come over on different ships, but we're all in the same boat now. So Raymond, you know that when the country was founded, the Caucasians coming from Europe, some of them were being just sent away, shipped out, and all of them for various reasons. And then the African sold their brothers and sisters into slavery to white merchants. So we had a lot of that. So we got over here, and then the Native American Indians were here and ended up being mistreated as well. So all of us came through a different method, but that racism was kind of integrated in there, and the classism was integrated into that. So now we have to do what Martin Luther King Jr. also said. When you learn to value the human personality, you won't kill anybody. We can't be colorblind. Skin color does not denote a different race. That's just ethnicity. But our blood is red, not colorblind, and we have to learn to live together as brothers and sisters and not perish together as fools.
I agree. Boy, no one could have stated it more eloquently. I want to share with you, you mentioned what your uncle said. This is Dr. Martin Luther King from 1966, part of that same interview that the media has been clipping. Listen.
I will never change in my basic idea that nonviolence is the most potent weapon available to the Negro in his struggle for freedom and justice. I think for the Negro to turn to violence would be both impractical and immoral.
Alveda, what do you say to those who claim if you don't act out violently, no one will hear us?
Violence is impractical, immoral, and disrespectful. In the case of George Floyd, memorial today, and the people are grieving. I'm grieving, I'm praying. But to say that you're honoring his legacy by killing, shooting, looting. There's a young lady in New York, there's a viral video, and she's saying, okay, we're not burning our houses. We live in the projects, we're not burning that. We're not burning up our transportation, you're doing that, so that you can take even more of our dignity away. That's disrespectful, immoral, and impractical.
I want your reaction to this woman. Her business was vandalized during the riots over the last few days. Listen to this. It's very similar to the person you're talking about. Listen.
The problem that bothers me, you said Black Lives Matter. I've worked here part-time. Plus, I'm a part owner of this store. You said Black Lives Matter. Why don't you choke me? I'm black.
Tell him, sister.
Look what you did to my store.
Tell him, sister.
Look what you did to my store. We've been here all night cleaning up. all night tweeting.
And you got black people
Now,
standing right here with them. Black
Tell
people.
me,
That's right.
Black Lives Matter.
Exactly.
You lied. You wanted to loot the store. You needed money. Get a job like I do. Stop stealing. This is the neighborhood. We're trying to build it up, and you tearing it down.
I imagine there are a lot of African Americans in communities who feel that way, Alveda.
Absolutely, and not just African Americans. People all over the cities now, all of uptown, call it, in the high-end stores, in the communities with the mom and pop stores. This is disrespectful, immoral, impractical, absolutely wrong. My dad in the 1960s, Raymond, stood on a car after our home had been bombed, and people were wanting to turn the car and, what do they call it, Molotov cocktails, trying to burn.
Right.
That, a minute, if you need to hit somebody, hit me, but I'd rather you go home and pray. My family and I are okay. The people actually, because of prayer and the power of God, did begin to calm down. Yeah.
Is that what's needed today, Alveda? First of all, before we get to that, it seems a lot of this violence is coming from outside agitators because, look, you know, I live in New Orleans. We don't have much of a racial divide here. Everybody's together. It's a very small place. We eat at the same places. We recreate at the same places. Do people not realize? I think the people who live there know these are the lifelines of our communities, that store, that grocery. It seems to me the people who are doing this are outside agitators like Antifa. They don't care what you torch. They just want to get a message across of anarchy.
Outside agitators like Antifa, we have caught on camera, and I'm sure you have some of those too, people going into the communities, unloading piles of bricks and laying them outside for people to throw, setting up the angst and the anxiety. I was able to pray with some young people in Ohio by phone, and I told them their worth, their dignity. Please don't riot. You have a purpose. We as leaders, and everybody's a leader one way or the other, even if you're just leading yourself in your own home. But use your own platform, and many of us have social media platforms, to speak reason, to speak peace and calmness. It's wrong when they say no justice, no peace. Actually, you have to have peace and reason and communication so that you can have justice. So peace goes first, and then we come together with righteousness and justice.
What's the role of faith in all this, Alveda? It seems to me the foundation of the civil rights movement, really the foundation of any movement of justice, is predicated on people of faith. Certainly that was the case with your father, with your uncle. These were a band of churches united in a faithful purpose that moved forward. This movement today, these protests seem to be utterly devoid of that Christian foundation, that faithful root.
Raymond, faith without works is dead. Show me your faith, I'll show you my works. Faith works by love. And so we take our faith and we put it into action. And as we begin to do that with agape love, that doesn't mean you let people get away. It's not loving to say, oh, just get your frustrations out, burn up everything. That's not love. That's not faith. And that causes panic and fear. So with faith, with love, with understanding that our skin color does not define our race, the human race. We're not colorblind because God, Jesus gives sight to the blind. We see each other, we hear each other, and we work together. Yeah.
No, I think we have to start regarding one another, and your uncle was prophetic in this. Not by the color of our skin, but by the quality of our who we are as people, children of God, which is really what he was trying to impart. And I do worry that this situation, do you think we're exacerbating racial tensions by pointing out, you must say this, you have to act this way, you must move on this path, or you're a racist? Is that dividing the races rather than bringing them together in a common purpose of justice and true racial equality?
That it divides the human race. There's not races with an S. There's one race, the human race, a different ethnic group. So the hardest thing for me to do when I first got this many years ago was to stop saying the racists need to come together. Biracial marriage, biracial children. I know for a fact that I am part African out of Nigeria and other parts of West Africa. I am out of Cork, County Cork, Ireland, through my granddaddy, Martin Luther King Sr. His grandfather was Nathan Branham King in Ireland. And my mom's daddy, Square Reese, part Cherokee. So what race am I? I'm a human race with those different blended ethnicities. So we're blended by ethnicity, but we are one human race. That's the hardest thing, to just stop saying the races, the racial division. Look, they'll just try to say, well, what race am I? And they'll start trying to pull off things and wipe their face off and all that. We are the human race.
How do we repair these relations between the community and the police, Alveda, to not only lower the temperature in these confrontations, but to avoid them in the future? What work is needed in the community, and what can the wider society do to help that healing?
Raymond, I hope you'll allow me to say this. George Floyd was killed by Caucasian policemen. In
No
Atlanta,
doubt.
a college student from Morehouse, a college student from Spelman, they were out after curfew. They were tased, roughed up. The young man's hand was broken by Black police officers. So both things were wrong. But do you hear Black Lives Matter screaming at the Black police who broke this young man's hand and roughed up the lady, and they left the taser course in him for 8 hours. They didn't even finish taking him out. But is anybody crying out for what those Black policemen did to those young people? Absolutely not. So why do we only yell when white officers do something to Black people? If Black people do something to white officers, generally they're never going to live to tell the story. We already know that. So we've got to stop this, recognize people as human beings, value, as Martin Luther King Jr. said, the human personality. And police officers, I have someone that I know who's in law enforcement who admitted, I used to like to rough people up. I said, well, that was the wrong way. That should have been your last objective. And this person knows this now, but this person didn't always understand. We have to reteach compassion to those who are supposed to protect life and law. And you know, it wouldn't be Alveda if I didn't say from the womb to the tomb. The baby's in the womb too.
No, well, I saw that hashtag trending on Twitter the other day, Black Unborn Lives Matter, which was an interesting twist on things, because they're included in this too. And we rarely, if ever, talk about that Black genocide in the inner city and where Planned Parenthood opened shop, which you have to say, it's always in the Black and Hispanic communities. Always. Yeah, they don't move into lily white areas. They just don't. Before I let you go, Alveda, what changes do you see this protest as demanding? What changes should these protesters within the Black community seek? What do you define it for us?
I went into the community Sunday with my goddaughter, Angela Stanton King, here in Atlanta. And we were warned, don't go. There may be a riot. This may happen. We went on with some ministers and we began to pray among the people. And not surprisingly, because we knew this is what we wanted to hear anyway, the people there, we were in a public park downtown, and they began to be drawn to us and ask questions. They led some of our prayers. In Ohio, I saw this thing with Brian Kemper, and the young people were getting agitated and riled up. And as I began to pray and talk to them about destiny and purpose, they began to weep. And so the changes are going to come when we put down the lie of skin color racism. We're the human race. The changes are going to come when we listen to each other, and we will begin to unify as we do that.
Dr. Alveda King, thank you for allowing us to listen to you. I hope you'll come back. You can follow the work of Dr. Alveda King at alvedaking.com. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.